Good morning, dear student. Good morning. We are continuing the lection by normal physiology. The theme today: metabolism, thermal control. Question: definition of metabolism: process of assimilation and dissimilation. Plastic and energetic role of nutrients. Nitrogen equilibrium and regulation of metabolism. Energy balance of an organism. Basic metabolism, working metabolism, Hessler, laws of diets, heat production, and thermal control. Let's start from definition of metabolism. Exchange of substances in the set of process of transformation of substances and energy providing activity of an organism. At the same time, three occurs: extraction of energy at the arriving feedstuffs and their transformation into energy ATP. Formation of cellular components of a human body from the arrived feedstuffs, and formation and removal metabolic waste products from an organism. The metabolism is characterized by two constant processes: anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is synthesis of complex substances from simple ones. For example, synthesis of protein from amino acids. The catabolism is a disintegration of complex substances to simple ones. For example, disintegration of proteins to amino acids. Next question: plastic and energetic role of nutrients. Proteins carry out a plastic role as they split into two amino acids from which proteins of an organism and synthesized. Carbohydrates carry out an energetic role as energy is formed at their splitting. Fats carry out a plastic and energetic role. Nitrogen equilibrium. Nitrogen comes to an organism with proteins. Nitrogen are removed from an organism with urea, creatinine. If nitrogen arrives as much as it is removed, it is called nitrogen's balance. If nitrogen arrives more than it is removed, it is called positive nitrogen balance. If nitrogen is removed more than arrives, it is called negative nitrogen balance. It happens at an old age as a result of physiological atrophy of muscle bulk. Regulation of metabolism. Let's start from autoregulation. The direction of reaction in a cell is defined by quantity of the substratum coming to a cell. For example, in liver cells, the glycogen is formed from glucose, or the glycogen is split to glucose. If in the blood inflowing to a liver there is a lot of glucose, reaction goes toward formation of glycogen. If glucose isn't enough, the glycogen is split to glucose. Nervous regulation. Nervous regulation of metabolism is rather an exception than a rule. Arbeli-Genitsky effect. Increase of a tone of sympathetic nerves accelerates restoration of a muscle after fatigue. Humoral regulation of metabolism. It is mainly regulation by hormones. At the same time, lipophilic hormones get into a target cell and change synthesis of fermental protein. Hormones' primary messenger influence the activity of enzymes. Enzymes determine the speed and the direction of intracellular reactions. Next question, energy balance of an organism. The amount of the energy received with food and power consumption for the same time period determines energy balance of an organism. At the same time, energy is spent for the basic exchange and working metabolism. It is possible to measure amount of the energy spent by a person by means of a direct and indirect calorimetry. In case in direct calorimetry, heat generation by the person is measured in the special camera. At indirect calorimetry, we define respiratory coefficient. K, respiratory coefficient. The relation of volume of the absorbed oxygen to the volume of the emitted carbon dioxide. Oxidation of 1 gram of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats demands various amount of oxygen, and amount of the energy released at the time is various too. So per 1 liter of the consumed oxygen at oxidation of carbohydrates, it is released 5.05 kilocalorie, fat 4.69 kilocalorie, and of proteins 4.6 kilocalorie. These values are called a caloric equivalent of oxygen. Basic metabolism and working metabolism. The main exchange is the amount of energy necessary for activity maintenance. It is measured in the morning when a person empty stomach, a prone position, temperature, and emotional comfort. Under these conditions, the main exchange will depend on sex, growth, weight, and age. Working exchange is the amount of energy necessary for work performance. Working exchange plus power composition for processes of digestion growth is working increase. Basic metabolic rate together with working gain is overall metabolism of the whole body. Next question, heat level. Reaction, heat is independent from reaction phase but depends on the initial and final reaction products. So, next question, layers of diets. A diet is determined by the rate of the physiological needs of the organism in food. Nutrients that provide the energy in plastic should come into the body. Energy requirements for an adult male range from 2,100 to 4,200 kilocalorie a day. For women, this amount ranges from 1,800 to 3,500 kilocalorie a day. Wherein the diet should contain proteins, carbohydrates, and fats in a ratio 1 to 1 to 4. A daily diet should contain proteins, essential amino acid, lysine, isoleucine, valine, methionine, lysine, threonine, phenylalanine, tryptophan, unsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acid, vitamins, minerals, trace elements mass by included. Overall, the diet should provide well-being, good health and performance. The most important factor, even if the diet is proper, drawn up, is a dietary pattern. An interval between meals should be 4 to 5 hours. Breakfast should account for 30%, lunch 45%, and Dina 25 of the daily ration. Next question, heat production. A human body is homoatherm. We distinguish a homothermal nucleus, which includes tissues lying at depths more than 1 from the skin surface, centimeter from the skin surface. At change of temperature of a nucleus, it always comes back to an radiating point of 37 centigrade degrees Celsius. Temperature of surface tissue lower than nucleus, a fixed body temperature of the person remains on condition of balance between heat production in organism and its return to the external environment. Heat is formed as a result of cellular metabolism. It is primary warmth, secondary warmth, is formed during physical activity at muscular contraction. It is contractile thermogenesis. Non-contractile thermogenesis, it is formation of heat chain to activation of lipolysis in cell from brown fat. The thermolysis is carried out from the surface of skin by thermal radiation, convection, evaporation of water, and heat conduction. Exchange of heat between nucleus and surface, it carries out by transfer of heat by blood. And thermal control. Thermal control is an ability of an organism to maintain nucleus temperature in optimum limits. Nucleus temperature is perceived by the central thermoreceptors. Central thermoreceptors. These are thermosensitive neurons of a hypothalamus. Impulses from the peripheral of thermoreceptors on a spinothalamic tract come to a thalamus and then to somatic sensory cortex. Other part of signals from a peripheral thermoreceptors comes to the central of thermal control of a hypothalamus. So, the term metabolism and thermal control is finished, and we start new term. It is big term and it is last term in all course normal physiology. It is blood physiology. Blood physiology. Let's start. Blood physiology, physiology of erythrocytes. Question. Composition of blood. Next, blood functions. Next, physiological contents of blood. Next, blood plasma, structure, osmotic and oncotic pressure. Next, erythrocyte, structure and functions. Next, regulation of erythropoiesis, hemoglobin and its combinations, and erythrocyte sedimentation rate mechanism of ASR. Composition of blood. Blood consists of plasma and formed elements, erythrocyte, thrombocyte, leukocyte. Hematocrit, it is a relation of volume, percent of plasma and formed elements. It is normally equal to 55% of plasma and 45% of formed elements. Blood function. Main function of blood is transportation. Blood transferred gases, respiratory function, nutrients, trophic function, metabolism products, secretory function, biologically active combination, regulatory function, warmth, thermoregulatory function. Blood also performs protective function thanks to existence of leukocytes. The next question, physiology constants of blood. Constants of blood. Quantity of formed elements, erythrocytes, 40.5 to 5.5 times 10 to 12. Leukocytes from 4 to 9 times 10 to 9. Thrombocytes 180 to 320 times 10 times 10 to 9 per liter. pH blood ethereal 7.4, venous 7.36. Your buffer system supports pH blood, hemoglobin, proteinaceous, phosphatic, and bicarbonatic. Osmotic pressure is equal to 7.3 atmospheres. The concentration of electrolytes determined by concentration of sodium chloride is equal to 0.185%. It is isotonic solution. If concentration of sodium chloride is more than 0.85%, it is hypertonic, and if is less than 0.85%, it is a hypotonic solution. Blood plasma, structure, osmotic and oncotic pressure. Electrolytes, cations, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and other anions, chloricum, bicarbonate, and other organic acids are part of blood plasma. Proteins of blood plasma are presented by albumins, globulins, fibrinogen. Proteins of plasma provide colloid, osmotic acid, base and water homeostasis, viscosity of blood, transfer of lipids, amines, vitamins, amino acids, detoxification function, and immune reactions. Glucose makes up 19% of carbohydrates of blood. Lipids of blood include cholesterol, phospholipids, triglycerides, and fatty acids. Next question, an erythrocyte structure and function. Erythrocyte structure and function. An erythrocyte of the person has no core, mitochondria, lysosomes. It is a highly specialized structure, which main function is to transfer oxygen from lungs to tissue and carbon dioxide from tissue to lungs. Gases are transferred in connection with hemoglobin, which located in erythrocytes. The main source of energy in erythrocytes is glucose. Erythrocytes have the biconcave form that allows them to pass through capillaries. The erythrocytes lives in a vascular bed for 120 days. On its membrane, there are sialine acids which give it the negative charge. On the membrane, there are also group rhesus factor antigens. Several mechanisms of these of an old erythrocytes are defined. The erythrocyte phagocytized by macrophages. Next, intravascular hemolysis. Next, in a spleen, a liver, and bone marrow. Next question, regulation of erythropoiesis. The erythropoiesis is a process of formation of erythrocytes in bone marrow. This process includes the following phases: colony-forming cell erythrocyte, next one proerythroblast, next two basophilic erythroblast of the first order, basophilic erythroblast of the second order, next polychromatophilic erythroblast of the first order, Next, of polychromatophilous erythroblast of the second author. Next, polychromatophilous normoblast, the nucleation of normoblast. Next, reticulocytes, and next, erythrocytes. The erythrogenesis before formation of reticulocyte takes 5 days. The erythrogenesis at the person process in erythroblastic islands of marrow, macrophages and erythroid cell, a part of these islands, macrophages, phagocytes, the nucleus, which are passed off from normoblast, provide erythroblast with ferritin and plastase substances, secrete erythropoietin. Strengthening growth promoting substance is islands. Reticulocytes leave marrow into blood and turn into erythrocytes within a day. Normal reticulocytes make from 5 to 10% of all erythrocytes circulating in blood. Decreases of quantity of erythrocytes in blood is anemia, increases erythrocytosis. The main regulator of erythropoiesis is erythropoietin. They develop in kidneys, macrophages of marrow, Kupffer cells, and hepatocytes, and amount of them depends on the level of oxygen in blood. Sex hormones, androgen, increase sensitivity of cell of erythroid, role to erythropoietin, and strengthen erythrogenesis. Next question, hemoglobin and its combination. Hemoglobin is a hemoprotein containing iron. 1 liter of masculine blood contains from 140 to 175 grams. Feminine blood has 123 to 153 grams of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is placed in erythrocytes and makes them red. A combination of hemoglobin with oxygen is oxyhemoglobin, with carbon dioxide is carbohemoglobin, with carbon monoxide is carboxyhemoglobin. In all this combination, iron in hemoglobin is divalent. Action of a strong oxidase, iron, in hemoglobin turns into tervalent. The methemoglobin is formed. The oxyhemoglobin which has give oxygen is called reduced of deoxyhemoglobin. Next question, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, ASR, mechanism ASR. In the blood deprived of an opportunity to be catalyzed, place in a capillary with a diameter commensurable with a diameter of an erythrocyte and part in capillary upright. Formed elements will be divided into plasma and formed elements, the most of which is erythrocyte. ACR is estimated on plasma column height over a column of formed elements. Normal ACR makes for men from 1 to 10 millimeter per hour, for women from 2 to 20 millimeter per hour. Mechanism ACR. The erythrocyte appeared in blood from red marrow has a negative superficial charge. In the course of life, in the blood, cause protein, for example, fibrinogen, products of inflammation, disintegration of tumors and toxins, contact with surface of erythrocyte. All these molecules shield a charge of erythrocytes and ACR accelerated. Thus, ACR is an integrated indicator of blood composition. Maybe finished today. Finished today. The lecture is finished today.